Hi folks, Puffin here. I just heard a really interesting thing on the radio about fish farts. But the thing is that made it so interesting, well, the first thing that really caught my attention is I had this idea that Werner Herzog had a very unique voice. I've heard him in The Simpsons on a couple episodes, and I heard him recently on the Star Wars Andor series. And he's got such a fascinating, unique voice until I heard a person on this radio program who sounds exactly like Werner Herzog. And what I realized is this is just the sound of a Swedish speaking person speaking English with a Swedish accent, maybe of a certain age. But even the other guy, the younger guy, sounded like Werner Herzog, just younger. And so I thought, this reminds me, you don't know what you don't know. And until you get some context, it reminded me of a Doctor Who episode where there's a evil Minotaur character in a labyrinth style story called the Zylon. And in the first series, spoiler alert, the first part, the Zylon is the only very menacing creature like this. But then they go to where the Zylon came from, and there's a bunch of Zylons running around. And even though it was very scary when there's only one, when he's part of a context, it's just less scary somehow. So Werner Herzog was very unique to me, but I realized a lot of people talk like that, and I just didn't know. Now, the really fascinating and magical thing about this was that the reason they're reporting on this is because of fish farts. The Swedish government for 15 years, or the Swedish military, was investigating what they thought might be a Russian nuclear or Russian subs stealth technology, that they couldn't detect what these things were that sounded kind of like a submarine. Turns out there were schools of herring, like thousands of herring farting at the same time. That's what was producing the sound. And then that school would break up into two and four and then reform. And they're like, how is a sub doing this? Because they were only thinking about it from a military mindset. Turns out it wasn't a military threat, it was just fish. This reminds me of my theory about aliens, that aliens are not a military threat, but they do promise to end all of our militaries. If we think about things a different way, we can understand things a different way, and we just sometimes have to know the context. This was a school of fish farting, not a submarine. Now, it would be great if all military threats were just perceived and turned out to actually just be something natural and benign, like fish farts. Maybe one day that will be the case, but we have to actually stop actual military threats. Even though a lot of threats are perceived threats, and the idea of, say, nuclear, for instance, is the perceived threat instead of ever the actual threat. But it would be much better if we didn't even have the actual threat, and we removed these things so that they seem like an illusion, no more dangerous than fish farts. And again, you don't know what you don't know, but you can know that there are things you don't know. And so I learned something today. Werner Herzog isn't my person who sounds like that. We should also learn that we don't need military, that there's scary enough stuff out there like large groups of fish farting. Thank you.